Exile channel. This is part in the series of our Exile interviews. We have joining with us once again the our distinguished Reverend Clinton Chisholm, and it's so we're so honored to have him back again. And also we have with us our previous guest, special guest, David Smith, the resident, our resident poet. He is otherwise more widely known as the parking poet. Intriguing. And today, our examination would be, our discussion would center around the idea of people being exiled in their own homeland. Exile does not have to apply for people taking flight out of their own country. There are nations within the nation that has been excluded, has been oppressed, and has to deal with the tyranny of the minority in many cases. And to start us off, we will ask our resident poet to give us the essence of this idea of being exiled while within your own country. If you will, Mr. David Smith.
Okay. This is called the silent majority. The silent majority, so vast and so great, complain of the government and ponder its fate. With friends they speak freely and let opinions fly, but to stand and be counted, they don't even try. Political correctness has the control. The party, the few, the government on a roll. The public afraid of losing a job. Heavy-handed politics, the self-worth that they rob. And think of that silence, that deafening cry. Families are hurting as taxes fly high. That chosen few who make all the rules. They hover in secrecy, but who are the fools? To put integrity in a party, no doubt, standing for fairness, deafening silence that shouts. The silent majority, so vast and so great, opinions no value, taxpayers don't rate.
Yes, that kind of hits at the essence of those who are in numbers a majority, but yet have been silenced due to the few that are in power. And to move on from that, later on we will have hopefully, if technical issues can be resolved, someone that will be speaking to that from Jamaica itself. But in the meanwhile, we have our resident clergyman in exile, Mr. Clinton Chisholm, and my co-host, Raymond Grant, and Mr. David Smith. We will try to examine this issue. So without further ado, I'll pass the mic to Raymond.
Okay, thank you, Asa. Thank you for that introduction. Hi, David. Hi,
Hello.
Reverend. Hi, Clinton. How are you guys?
Hi, cool Raymond.
Okay. Yes, our topic today is, as Asa said, the silent majority and their role in national development. Right now, I wanted to hear what from the horse's mouth from a person who is actually in the silent majority in Jamaica, but due to technical difficulties, we're not able to do that.
Well, perhaps in place of that, I'll give you some numbers since I'm the numbers guy. Okay, in 2020, the population of Jamaica is at 2.96 million. Okay. And of that, 37% voted. So that means 63% did not. Mm-hmm. However, given that the number that was enumerated and put on the voting register was only 37%, that actually means that the JLP, who got 21% of the 37%, only managed to get around 8% of the eligible voters. Okay, because the eligible voter includes everybody over 18 and everybody over 65, and they only their numbers only account for about 8%.
Mm-hmm.
And for the PNP, they got somewhere below, right at 7 or a little bit below 7%. So you can see that these people are representing themselves as speaking for the population, but when in fact the votes that they have got is so minuscule compared to the actual population that is eligible to vote. You know, and
Sorry,
therefore, yeah.
Asa, just one little query. Eligible voters are those who are registered to vote, not those who are over the age of 18. You
Oh,
could be over 18. If you're not registered, you can't vote.
no, that's true. Perhaps I should distinct. Maybe the terms I use may not be correct in that sense. But the eligible voters are the 37% of the. I mean, by rights, if everybody that is of a voting age, 18 and above, is eligible if they're enumerated. And I think Raymond had pointed out that because of the very clunky electoral rules that they have in place, that they actually have to be in person enumerated. And those who are 18 and above by rights, if they should be able to be registered, but they are not because of the way they go about enumerating.
Yeah, the system there is not as in some so-called
Right.
first world countries.
So in a perfect world, basically, for a more efficient system, if they are able to enumerate everybody that's eligible to vote, let's say 18 and above, then there's 67%. I mean, 63% of the eligible, the 18 and above, right?
Mhm.
Because 18 below cannot. 18 above, by law, these people are supposed to be able to vote, but
Right.
they were knock off the registry simply because they have this archaic system of enumerating people. So in other words, the people who are eligible to vote based on the law, but due to the way they go about it, are not able to vote. The number of people who voted do not represent anywhere near the people who are by law able to vote.
So the point is well taken. We're still using just a minority of our population voting.
Very small, very small. You're talking about 37% of the people who are 18 and above.
Oh yeah, we've clarified that. I think the main point stands.
Yeah.
We quibble a little bit about the labels and the numbers, but the vast majority of Jamaicans do not participate in the electoral process in Jamaica. I want to start by reading some sections of an article by the Reverend, I think he's Reverend, Ronnie Thwaites. He's a former retired member of parliament for the PNP for Central Kingston. He goes in an article in today's paper, and I'm quoting, and then when you hear me reading this, I'm quoting. I'll just be reading a few sections of it. More than 60% of the electorate didn't bother to vote in the latest election because they don't see their interests connected to the outcome. And that's a point we made before, where we said that the only time these people interact with government or government agencies is in a negative way. I think if the figures were available, they would skew towards middle and upper class people having a higher proportion of participation in the electoral process. Mr. Thwaites goes on to say, it was just that they never saw the point of making the effort, right? The majority of us either take our democratic choice for granted or would just as easily substitute some other method of governance, especially if it made it easier to get a visa. So I'll just let you guys that sink in for a little bit, because I think the visa thing is related. For many, many years, Jamaican emigration from Jamaica has been a safety valve for the country, a social safety valve. I think the reason why there has not been a revolution or extreme violence in terms of on a massive nationwide scale, or not just talking the little street riots they have now and again. And there's a crime, and crime is a symptom of this, is another one of the safety. There are three safety valves, not two actually. Funny enough, one is crime, because the gangs take care of their cohort and they take care of their neighborhood. The gangs bring income into a neighborhood. I know for a fact, they provide protection for businesses. We call it extortion. They provide justice. We call it jungle justice or street justice. They help the elderly. They help children to go to school. So the gangs are one of those safety valves. So although crime and the gang violence and the crime associated with the gangs is a bad thing, it actually has its other side. So that's one thing. The second thing that is a safety valve is emigration, where the most ambitious, the best, the brightest, most hardworking, and people with the highest expectations leave Jamaica or are in the process of doing so. And this young lady today would have been an example of that. She's college educated, very, very articulate, very bright, but has no stake in Jamaica, has no intention to stay in Jamaica. And is one of the 80% that the polls show who would leave Jamaica if they could. Think of that. Asa, you are the numbers guy. 80% of the people want to leave Jamaica. How much is that remaining? How much leaving and how much would remain? Okay, I'm happy. I'll interrupt what I was saying because we have been able to reach Keisha in Jamaica. Keisha is one of the silent majority. I just need to close my studio door because I'm getting an echo. Sorry about that.
We're me in outer space and him in Northern Lights.
Yeah, her name is
A
Keisha.
bunch of space cadets.
Yeah, Keisha is our special guest today, one of the silent majority. Keisha is a 20-something-year-old young lady who has post-secondary education. I'm not going to disclose her full name or her whereabouts and so on, but she was in the process of emigrating when the COVID-19 situation happened and froze everything up. So welcome, Keisha. Thanks for being on Exile.
Hi, everybody.
Are you hearing
Hi,
her?
Keisha.
Are you hearing her?
I'm
Yes,
hearing
we
her.
are.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. So Keisha, I had sent you a couple questions that we wanted to ask you. And now, I'm just trying to figure out how do I access those questions on this phone now. Just give me a minute here. Oh, there's a chat. Okay. We'll start with the first of all, you had told me you had your first encounter with politics was as a child in central Kingston somewhere, correct?
Right.
And well, in your own words, tell us about that incident.
That incident was hella shitty. I think I was in about grade 2 or 3. Either come down to election time and very much being unaware of that at a young age. So I'm fully clad in a particular color, walking very merrily to school. It was sports day and all of that.
What was the color? What was the color? What was the color you were dressed in?
I was wearing the color green.
Okay.
Well, that was the house that I was placed in. So yeah, naturally I was wearing the color green.
Okay, so the school.
Green
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was in about grade 2 or 3 at the time, and the next thing you know, some man I say, hold on there, some little labor right pin it there. Grab on me go bus so me say, oh the road to that one right there, so me have to take foot in and me and my cousin them and a bolt in order to get away from the man them. And me say, I never sure what did I go on in the evening when me I say to my daddy say, Daddy, you know, say some man run me down to the because my dress up in a green and he must say, what? And a dangerous something that whatever, suppose them did only and beat you. The next time my father just got school, get for change me from out of the color of somebody there, and thankfully them put me in a purple house, which is a safe color.
Mhm.
So that was my first experience with politics in Jamaica.
How old were you?
I was about 8 or 9.
8 or 9 years old. And they were going to beat you up because you were wearing
Yes,
the colors
they
of
were
an
right.
opposing party. In this case, this must have been PNP comrades attacking you as a JLP person in green clothing, thinking you're a JLP. You're 8 years old in a school uniform that matches the colors of the opposition, you get attacked.
It was just a lot of green because it was sports day.
I get you. I get you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now, that was your first experience. That was the first incident. You're 8 years old. I understand you have never voted.
Never.
All right. And as I mentioned before, you are in the process of attempting to leave Jamaica, emigrating. Why do you want to leave Jamaica?
Because there's nothing here in Jamaica for me. Nothing at all.
There's nothing there. You're young, you have post-secondary education, and there's nothing there.
Nothing at all.
When you say nothing, you mean you've tried to find employment?
Yes, I have. I have levels 1 and 2 in early childhood education, levels 1 and 2 in food and nutrition, and still nothing at all.
And you have exhausted your resources in job hunting, as I understand. Okay.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, but don't you hear that some prosperity has been promised by the JLP and the PNP?
I am glad you used that word, promised. All right, that's it.
And the PNP promised wealth, but they didn't come in. Okay, so if there were no impediments and you could get anything you wanted, what would that be?
To get out of Jamaica tomorrow.
Wow. I really meant if you could get anything you wanted in Jamaica.
The only thing I would want in Jamaica is a proper job, and that is not available to me right now. So there's nothing else here for me.
All right. Are the members of the panel here, are you hearing clearly? I just want to be
sure. Hearing clearly.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if Keisha has other family members in Jamaica right now.
He's asking if you have other family members in Jamaica.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Are they employed or unemployed?
Are they employed or unemployed?
They are, well, my 2 sisters are unemployed. One is a beautician, very good at what she does. She's employed. Another one is an extremely good sales rep, and she's also unemployed.
So they're both unemployed. Okay. Answer your question.
Brother? Yeah, that helps. But for a beautician who's usually self-employed, she can start a business wherever she operates. If she has a place that she could have her clients come to the home where she lives, and she could do a beautician work there. So she stands a better chance of being employed as a self-employed person rather than the sales rep who has to rely maybe on a company to employ her.
Keisha is obviously an intelligent and energetic and very driven person to have gone through secondary education and get all that other qualification in terms of nutrition and all that. And it took years of training and certain amount of money invested in her education. And now all she could think of is leaving Jamaica, which is really a sad comment on on this idea of you have someone who is of a level of intelligence that can really contribute, but yet she find the only way out is to just leave Jamaica. Otherwise, she would just spend the rest of her early, very productive years seeking employment or be severely underemployed.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So Keisha, this is, I wanted to get the fullness of your story before, because I know the Reverend has to leave us early today. What would it take for you to be willing to stay in Jamaica?
A proper job that I can, so that I'm able to properly provide for myself. That's all.
Yeah, that's pretty basic. It's not a lot to expect, eh? Okay.
Reasonable.
Yeah, you seem to.
Has she explored Heart NTA?
Pardon me, Clinton?
Keisha, have you explored options within Heart NTA?
He's asking if you have explored options in Heart and Heart. That's the.
Yes, my last notification was with Heart.
And no help there, eh?
And they can't find any employment for you at all. Really rough, really rough.
Yeah. Okay. Now that the election is past, Keisha, I'm gonna ask you one last question. You had told me that you were in the immigration process, you had to get a document signed by a justice of the peace. And I remember when I was in Jamaica going into the ganja business, I had to get a document signed by a justice of the peace. And I had to go all the way to my childhood pastor up in Hope Pastures to get him to sign it. Unlike Canada, where a notary, you can take your ID and he examines your ID and gets convinced it's genuine. I think we lost her. Hello. Okay, we lost Keisha. Yeah, as I was saying, in Jamaica, yeah, we're still dialing. Yeah, in Jamaica, the justice of the peace apparently has to know you personally. Mm-hmm. Even if you have an ID, like she told me she had taken her passport and her food handler's permit, which have both government photo issued IDs. And no, because she doesn't know any pastor. Most of them are ministers of religion. She's not a religious person. She can't get this simple document signed, which is required for her process of immigration. Okay, she's calling back. Oh,
well, the thing is, I think apart from the archaic remuneration kind of process that eliminates over 60% of the legally eligible voters out of the electorate. Apparently, this is another demonstration of various rules and regulations that exist as red tape that stands in the way of operation, of very simple requests or certain operations within the government. So I think these are all within the JLP's mandate that they can, if they want to address either making the electorate being more representative by making an easier way of getting people to vote. And also, as you have mentioned about this idea of government photo ID is insufficient unless you know the pastor yourself. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that seems to add to the frustration of the population.
Yeah, Justice of the Peace can sign that form too. Mind you, there are notary publics in certain law firms in Jamaica, but you would have to pay them to sign a document for you, whereas the Justice of the Peace can't charge you.
Oh, I see.
But the Justice of the Peace has to know you. They can't vouch for you if they don't know you. And JPs are every single parish has a plurality of JPs. Maybe she doesn't know a JP, thinking that she can only get it from a pastor. A sergeant of police as well can certify a document.
No, not for this purpose. They insist they want a JP.
At any rate, I think we could look at this as a symptoms of a system that has been inherited from days gone by that needs reform. One of so many.
In the old days, everybody knew the JP because the people were small. Everybody knew the JP. It's not like that anymore.
Yeah. So the question at hand is that given that there is large number of the population, their views and their wishes and their desires are not represented.
Lisa, I don't mean to cut you. I apologize.
Okay,
Hold the thought. I have to say something to Reverend. Oh, she's gone. Hello? to Reverend Chisholm that I wanted her to hear before he goes, because he has to go now.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
What I said to you, Reverend, I was going to say to you, to Clinton, is that if you knew of maybe just a piece in the with your contacts who she could travel to and go to and get this document.
Which area is she again? Central Kingston?
She's currently, originally from Central Kingston. She's currently in Old Harbor.
Old Harbor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could connect her with a JP there, one of my Baptist
Right,
pastors.
off the air.
All right, I'll send you a name and an email address.
Yes.
And you can get it to her to try.
Because I can't get her back. There's apparently a rainstorm going on in Jamaica, and apparently they have a dry weather internet system. So thank you, Brother Clinton.
Bless you, my friend. I'll email you once I finish my class tonight. I'll email you an address that she can link with.
Okay.
Blessings, gentlemen. Keep well.
Thanks for joining us on Exile today, Reverend.
Pleasure. Take care.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. So, yes, gentlemen. So we're back. We had a lot of technical difficulties on our call, but I think we got the gist of what she wanted to say, which is, here's a person in Jamaica who has done everything right. Went to school, worked hard, graduated from high school, went to college, graduated from college, 2 colleges, one early childhood and one in the culinary skills. So 2 post-secondary educations. And she and her sisters cannot get work, just cannot get jobs. So the only, as I said, remember I talked about the safety valve business. The only solution for them, for young people like that, is either the gangs, so she would get pregnant for some gangster and get taken care of that way, or they emigrate. Those are the only 2 options, or they lose their mind and go insane. I mean, that's not an option. So that's not a lot for people to ask, just for a job. She's not asking for a lot. She's not asking for a lot. And it's very, very sad to me that in Jamaica, what we have is a large number of people who have disengaged and pull up stakes because the country has nothing to offer them, and neither does the politics. And there is a saying by Alexander Vidman, late of the United States Army and the National Security Council, in the Atlantic of last week, 14 September 2020. And I quote, "Authoritarianism is able to take hold, not because you have a strong set of leaders who are forcing their way. It's more about the fact that we can give away our democracy. In Hungary and Turkey today, that has happened. In Nazi Germany, these folks gave away their democracy by being complacent." So in the case of Jamaica, the silent majority are there. We accuse them of apathy and complacency. And this young lady is anything but apathetic and anything but complacent. She wants to get ahead. It's the system. It's the way we run Jamaica that has forced them and impelled them to give up on Jamaica and to look elsewhere for life. And if a country is going to develop, the people have to be engaged. The challenge for this new government is, how do you develop a country when the vast majority don't vote, don't care, and have given up on the country? When you have a situation where there's a whole generation, this is a lost generation here. It's very little you can say to a Keisha to make her consider staying in Jamaica. It comes down to, in her case, for jobs. And I think for most people, that would be the cry.
I would like to interject at this moment that as Keisha is trying to find employment and has exhausted all avenues and had this feeling that she has to leave Jamaica in order to make a life for herself. Whereas if she were to stay, she can't even find employment that would provide her with a living wage. Now, all this happened prior to the pandemic. As you recall, she was in the middle of her application for immigration that the pandemic happened. So she had already given up. She has already exhausted all avenues. So could you imagine now after COVID-19 pandemic has put the island on lockdown. Tourist arrival has diminished to a dwindle, a trickle, and various businesses have shut down. So for the youth and for young adults in Jamaica who's trying to make a life to start on their life journey, employment is not there. There's just it. They are finding it. The situation now is even more dire. So now you can see how comical and ridiculous a lot of the campaign promises were. As you can see, uh, the, the connection, internet connection, was so poor that we had lost connection a few times. But yet, Prime Minister Hollis is talking about artificial intelligence, and they haven't even addressed the basic possibility or basic provision of gainful labor, gainful employment to the youth and the young adults, and to the people that is there that was formerly employed by the tourist industry. So something is gonna, it's gonna, all this pressure is building up. The people are not able to leave for better employment possibilities. They're stuck in Jamaica. Government is not providing the opportunity there. If they choose to continue their way in taking care of the old boys network, that leaves Keisha and all millions, at least hundreds of thousands people like her to be unemployed, and there's no safety social net in Jamaica. What are they supposed to do?
Okay, I have Keisha back on the line, Asa.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to ask her if she has anything else she would like to say before we let her go. Hello,
Well,
Keisha, are you there? All right, there's
actually, a question that you should ask
Asa
Keisha is
question.
after, like, she's been eligible to vote for maybe almost 10 years or so or more, right? Or maybe 10 years or so. Why?
Yeah.
She says she hasn't voted, but why? Why hasn't she voted?
Why haven't you voted? That's the question.
I've never had a reason to vote. I don't believe in voting for false promises. And every time an election comes around, that's all they come with, a lot of false promises. And I'm so not for that.
So the limited number of elections that you've been exposed to, you're already disenchanted and totally lost faith in the electoral system.
Completely.
So therefore, that's why so many people thought, what's the point? What's the point of voting?
Exactly, exactly. I wanted to really quash this idea that the people, okay, we've lost her again, so hang on.
Give up.
I'm sorry that our Reverend in residence is not here, or resident reverend not here, because I wanted to mention, you see, that Jamaicans are people who are not apathetic and are not complacent, and they're really trying. And as I said, the immigration process, having been through it myself, I can tell you, it takes a lot of determination and grit, not to mention the cost, the money cost, and the patience and the long wait. So these people are not, we tend to classify, I've read things in the media that the people are apathetic and they're complacent in democracy and blah, blah, blah. And that's all BS. The people I talk to who want, a lot of them who want to emigrate, they have tried in Jamaica. This young lady has told me she has tried and exhausted all her funds looking for work and not being able to find any. And I wanted to really warn Jamaicans and warn the government. Jamaica has 4 national heroes who I want to mention. Jamaica has a history of whenever it reaches a tipping point, the people, a leader rises up and the people rebel. During slavery, it was Nanny of the Maroons, who is a national hero in Jamaica. She rose up and led a bunch of slaves and escaped slaves, and eventually reached to, I keep on saying, but it just won't pick up. Yeah.
Well,
Listen
they
there.
were they went into their
Hello, are you there? Hello?
stronghold in the upper highlands, and was able to force the British to sign a treaty and acknowledging their existence.
Yes, yes. So you see, I was just saying that there's been Nanny of the Maroons who rose up against the oppression of slavery. After that, we had the Morant Bay Rebellion, again, where it led to the British governor being removed. A lot of people were killed. It was led by Paul Bogle, another national hero of Jamaica, Sam Sharp, who's hung in the Sam Sharp Square in Montego Bay, and George William Gordon. And all three of those are Baptist ministers. So I am saying that this is where the church, the Baptist church in particular, has had a history of backing movements for freedom from oppression. And I'm hoping the Baptist church will lead the charge among the churches to make the necessary changes that need to be made in Jamaica. Because if that doesn't happen, then nothing is going to change. I'm going to remove my background because I'm looking a little ghost-like. Yeah, so, in the final analysis, that's what needs to happen. Civil society, I'm hoping led by the church, will rise up, not in a revolutionary, necessarily Paul Bogle kind of way, and leading to people being killed, but to force the existing political establishment, like how those people forced the existing political establishment. First, in the first case, to get rid of slavery and to free them. Initially, just free them. They were called Maroons, and then eventually slavery was freed because there were constant rebellions and followed by efforts made in England and so on. Again, the church was very active in the anti-abolitionist movement. And then under colonialism, we had the three other heroes I mentioned who actually fought in the streets and died. Well, one was killed. No, all three were captured and all three were hung. So they were killed, not in the fighting, but hung for sedition. And they're going to call it sedition. What we're talking about now, though, is not sedition. We're not calling for people to grab up arms, but we're saying that all of civil society should go to the government and say, these are changes that need to be made. There are things that can be done to employ people like her. One of the things I mentioned was a national service, like they had back in the day in the US, where a sort of draft, where she could go and do 2 years, she would get a stipend, she would get further training. It would sop up all of this unemployment. Yeah? Because a country cannot develop if the vast majority of its people, you never got back to me the figure, Asa, of how many people are left over after 80%.
After 80%.
Leave. Or 80% who wanted to leave, if they could leave.
Oh, I see. No, I
80% of the total population, I would say.
Oh, 80% of the total population was
The total adult population.
Yeah, total adult population. If you were to look at 80% of that, you're looking at, I could give it to you right away.
Because you'd exclude the seniors, eh? Just 80% of adults.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume some seniors emigrate as grandparents, but that's not, we're not going to count those. That's very, very
right.
Small. They're probably just a joint family.
Be 1.4 million.
So 1.4 million of Jamaican people want to leave that place out of a total population of 3 million. So, and that 3 million includes children and old people and people in prison and all that.
Right.
So obviously, if there was an open border, open road to North America and Britain and other places, there would be a remnant left in Jamaica, just a
Right.
remnant.
Hmm.
So I think on that note, I want to go on some more, but to the role the church could play in this again. But we talked about that in the last episode as well a bit. So
Well,
at this point,
well,
just wanted. Sorry, Asa, you wanted to say something?
yeah. Well, when you look at it, what Keisha is talking about is just a living wage, a job with a living wage.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't want handouts. She wants to be able to work so she can live basically. We're not talking about luxuriously or well off. She
Mm-hmm.
says just basically. So
Mm-hmm.
this is a sort of like a basic human right,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to work and live, right? In the very primitive times, that's all you want to do, and that's all they're wanting to do. So in fact, this is not a matter of partisan ideology, all that. This is basic human rights. Therefore, there is definitely a role for the church, because the church is talking not partisan ways. They're looking at the morality of it, the morality of being able to, when you're alive and you work hard, and to be able to at least survive, right? At least to carry on living and have some form of dignity. But so therefore, and in many countries, as I mentioned, like in South Africa with Desmond Tutu and so on, right? It is a matter of human right, dignity, and morality, and therefore the church, when if they are able to spearhead this movement, they have the legal or the moral authority to demand for human rights for every citizen on in the country, right? So therefore, it will not, JLP or PNP will not lose any political coinage by going along with it. Whereas if the PAP or JLP, I mean, we look at the figures, although they won a majority of the seats, 70 over percent of the seats, they only won by about 5 percentage points, because we're of the electorate, because of the first past the post, right? So they will continue to be at loggerheads, trying to jockey for power. But if the church come in and say, look, I just want we are interested in the basic dignity of a person being able to work and to be able to uh, uh, make a living. And, if we put aside your partisan ideology, and let's get these basics to your citizens, it is a moral duty of political leaders, or not, leaders, to be able to furnish that, because that's ultimately why they were voted in. Your sound? Your sound?
Sorry, I keep forgetting to turn on my mic. Yeah, so we're coming to the end of the program. I'm just going to wind up with a quick summary to say this is a warning to Mr. Holness. I quote the names of the previous national heroes. When people have all doors closed to them, very often what will happen is a populous leader, or if they feel that way, a populous leader will rise up, and then you have problems. And we have had 4 national heroes in the history of Jamaica rise up. All of them were, Nanny survived of the Maroons, I believe. I don't think she was ever executed. She was victorious. But the 3 of the 4 were executed. 3 of the 4 were religious leaders. And I'm calling upon the church. You have an example in history to come to Mr. Holness and speak truth to power like those national heroes did, and demand that we get rid of this plutocracy that we have in Jamaica, and that people like the Keishas of Jamaica will not want to leave their beautiful homeland and come to cold, cold places like Canada and the US. But they will stay to develop their country, have their families there, and have the lives and all the things that we talked about in Vision 2030 that everybody wants. So
Our
again,
rights
everybody,
and freedoms and freedom of speech, the value of veterans, their sacrifices we teach. The next generation is hard to define. The foundation in history we now undermine. We make up new rules for the Constitution to change. Yet it's the selfishness and greed is to blame. Collapse of our values our ancestors fought through. This generation where ideas are new. Our books used to balance, hard work by the way, and now it is greed and technology to stay. We have lost our values and spying's a breeze. With advanced technology, we can do it with ease. The basic foundation, nowhere to be found. Honesty and integrity have collapsed to the ground. If politicians can do it, then why can't I? Leading by example, our values will die. Our rights and freedoms, especially of speech, since government's corrupting, silence they teach.
That everybody wants. So again, everybody, thank you for joining us on the channel. If you have liked the channel, do not hesitate to click the like button. We welcome your comments, favorable or unfavorable. And if you subscribe, you will be kept up to date on our episodes, on our programs as they are published online. Thank you all. Thank you, David. Thank you. Our resident poet is David Smith. My co-host is Asa Sue, and I am Raymond Grant. Cheers to you all.